Well, all right. I'm doing any navigating patterns videos. This is going to be more like a navigating pattern video. There's various reasons why I haven't put videos out on the other channel. So instead, you get a crappy rant. Um, and if you want more stuff like this, go to navigating patterns. It's all there. There's a ton of stuff there. Well, I want to talk about this H1B visa bullshit because people are yapping up a storm and they no idea what you're talking about. Vivek, Elon, none of these people have any idea what they're talking about. They do not understand what they're saying. Now, maybe they understand and they're lying. I actually don't think so, but it could be, right? It's more likely that they just have a misunderstanding. Because right now, folks, let me tell you what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a bunch of midwits and below and very smart people, all of whom have the wrong idea about parts of the world. How many parts, which parts, don't know, don't care. They all have something right, and they're pointing at the things they have right, which you should do because they're the things you have right, and they're casting the rest of that onto the world and saying, aha, this is the most important thing. Well, they have it right. It's most important to them. And then they're coming up with wacky statements. Okay. Just to be clear, H1B visas are about workers legally working here who don't live here yet or aren't permanent residents. Not a problem. A lot of them try to be permanent residents, right? And so to that extent, it is somewhat of a loophole in the immigration system. Because what you're doing is instead of saying going through the normal immigration procedures, you're coming here to work and then you're kind of sneaking in, right? Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? However, it's based on a number of fundamental principles. Just to understand these principles, because this is actually a very complicated issue. We first need to understand the immigration problem. So I'm going to give you my perspective as best as I can manage. It is probably full of a bunch of holes, but I already know this. However, I know what I know, and I know what's important. Okay. There are other work visa systems for agriculture, for example, that aren't H1B, right? Which is just a tech-based thing as near as I can understand, right? That work fine. And so when a lot of people say, well, if we didn't have, immigration across the border, we wouldn't have people to work the farms. That's such a lie. It's insane. Like, it's such a lie that when people say that, we should probably put them in prison, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, this is insane. We have work visas for those people, and they go back home, and they pay taxes. Illegal immigrants do not go back home, and they do not pay taxes. Clear difference. Clear difference. Those workers, migrant workers, they're called migrant workers, not immigrant workers, should not be confused with immigrants. They're migrants, and they go back home, and they pay taxes. This isn't that hard. We already have a category for that. We don't need illegal immigration to fill that hole. It's not a hole. Now, you could argue to keep food prices low, we need illegal immigrants, not just migrant workers. Listen, I'm not even saying that's an invalid argument. Could be. I don't know. If that's the case, we have a bigger problem, which is called food's too expensive. Right. Right. Why is it so expensive to farm? Not to buy food, that's a different problem, right? But to farm. Why is it so expensive to farm? Is that a regulatory issue? I don't know. I'm not a farmer. Right? Is that an issue of commodity costs are too high and the companies that sell fertilizer are too greedy? I don't know. Certainly could be. Is it an issue of corporate control over the food processing or the food transport or both? Could be. Okay, you getting a sense for how many things it could be? Now, food prices are also too high to the consumer. That's a different problem. That could well be corporate greed, or it could well be a broken system with too many tiny monopolies in the way. I don't even think monopolies are bad, so let's not go down that road. Okay? So illegal immigration is an invalid category to mix with other things. Okay? Now, there's legal immigration, which has a set of barriers to entry to get into the country and a bunch of requirements. There are ways to bypass that. One is illegal immigration. Another one is h1b visas. Now, was it designed that way? I have no freaking idea. Who cares? Let's deal with facts on the ground that we can deal with and not deal with, is this a conspiracy? Are there cigar smoking men in a room? This is irrelevant, right? Because no matter how it got that way, the fix is the same. No matter how it started, the fix is the same. So let's just address really quickly the idea that somehow there isn't enough talent in the United States, okay? It's not enough talent. It's enough available talent that hasn't been mopped up. Okay, I can tell you as somebody who is in the industry for over 35 years, absolutely true. 100% mathematically certain. Okay, well known, Google and Amazon will hire your ass to keep you away from their competitors and then give you nothing to do. There's been whole articles on this. Like, I don't even understand why this is a question. Yes, the tech companies are locking up valuable people who actually have some skill or knowledge or ability or talent or whatever, and forcing them to work for them instead of other companies, even when they don't have work for them to do or relevant work for them to do. That happens all the time. There are also systemic issues. I don't hate Google. However, Google's business model, is it a business model? Seriously, is it? Is something like, well, we'll just let our engineers do whatever they want and maybe we'll make products out of it. So what happened is, and this has already happened at least a couple times that I can recall, is, their people would work, 25% of their time or whatever on something, and maybe they've changed that format or whatever, right? But they would come up with things, and then some of them would get kind of released or whatever, or used by the public, and they'd get abandoned because the company didn't want to put money into it. Right, because developing software is such a small part of having a business around a service or a product that it's not worth thinking about. Nobody wants to hear that, right? The software engineers want to hear, oh, no, we developed software and that's the most valuable thing. It's not even close to the most valuable thing. Sorry. First of all, software is mathematically certain. And so all the types of software are actually known. Yeah. And there are some solutions that haven't been found, but the types of available software solutions are known. They're actually known. The problem is that to make them useful to the people who want to use them, you have to do a bunch of things, right? So for example, Dropbox. Dropbox is a fantastic service, or was. I don't really use it much anymore. Wonderful piece of software. The day I found out Dropbox is rsync and it's just a GUI on top of rsync, I went, why am I so dumb? Why didn't I do that? They wrote a GUI and put it on top of rsync and shipped it out to people and charged money and made a lot of money. I could have done that. This is not a technically hard software problem to solve. It just isn't. You need to write a GUI for an existing piece of software that already does all the features you need. Okay. That's what makes money in the software industry, my friends. Not fancy new algorithm for databases or upgrades to DNS or the TCP/IP stack. These are things that Google does. Google doesn't make any money off of any of those things, though. So your talented, clever software solution is actually zero value. For real. All the cool shit's been done, bro. Sorry. Internet's already here. We have super talent now and people are smart. Look up buffer bloat. I've talked about it before on this channel. Look up buffer bloat. No one in the industry could solve buffer bloat. No one. The people that solved buffer bloat, that found the problem and then fixed the problem, were people who used to be in the industry and left. Think about that. That means the top end talent is gone. It's gone. It's less. So you're talking about, hey, we have all these talented. No, you don't. You have a bunch of people who are educated in something like software engineering that's usually a paltry shell of what you used to learn to become a software engineer, quite honestly. I was there. I've seen this physically myself in the industry with people working in the industry. They're terrible. Most of software engineering talent is untalented. Okay? So where does this leave us? Well, look, the industry, I've talked about pieces of this before. The industry has moved and shifted and changed quite a bit. Because most of the cool software has been written, maybe all of it, hard to kind of say, right? There's still solutions that can be applied, right? But if you're really interested, like, Mark, how do we write a web server that can scale past the current web servers? I can literally just tell you on any given day walking down the street. Like, these are not difficult things. They've been discussed. You could read the C10K paper to see an example of how they went from small scale to larger scale, right? Scaling problems are something I actually understand very well because I've been doing it for 35 freaking years plus. Isn't that hard, right? And so these aren't, they're hard to implement, right? And so the difficulty in implementation, rather than the difficulty in like clever software algorithms, blah, right, has been driving the industry for 20 years, at least, maybe longer, but at least 20 years. There are exceptions. Google occasionally fixes things. Google makes all their money off of advertising. They make $0 off of clever algorithms and software and cool software. Zero. You go, oh, Google's got this great search algorithm. No, it doesn't. That's a load of bullshit. Go read the technical papers. Their algorithm is not great. The reason why their algorithm outperformed everybody else is because they used much cheaper machines that were much faster. That's the reason. If you actually look, hardware innovations and automation innovations, not algorithm. Innovations in data storage, abso-freaking-lutely. Not algorithm. Zero algorithm. Any algorithm is better with more data. Any algorithm. It doesn't matter the algorithm. Google was able to collect more data quicker at a cost that was like 1/100th the competitors. That's what happened. Sorry, you can look it up. It's in the history. You can see it. I've read it. This isn't that hard. Okay? Zero algorithm. No one cares. Sorry, no one cares. This doesn't matter. Of course, their algorithm doesn't even work now. They still have more data. And their algorithm doesn't even work. It's terrible. Terrible. So how good is the algorithm? How much talent do you... Zero. That's how much. So it's just talent gone. Well, what does that mean, Mark? Okay. In any industry, in any corporation. And look, you know what? I'm just going to screw this. I'm going to explain something very important to you. This has nothing to do with the tech industry. Nothing. The tech industry used to be unique. Sure. 30 years ago, abso-freaking-lutely. It's not anymore. Let me show you something. Let me grab it. Where the hell is it? It's on the bookshelf somewhere. Oh, no, it's not. It's in the other room. I won't get it. It's too long. Grab a copy of Steven Silberger's 10-Day MBA. Look at the complexity of business. It's only 10 days to read it and then have the equivalent of an MBA from something like Harvard. 10 days. That's it. 10 days of your time. One book. I don't usually recommend books. I'd rather burn them all and start over. That'd be great. But it's fine. That book's cool. You can read that one. Okay? Businesses are complex entities. When tech was about innovation, and that was 30 years ago probably, right? This talent thing mattered, right? Who you had working for you mattered. What matters now is whether or not you can write very easy, well understood pieces of code within an existing framework so you're really not writing that much code, right, to get a job done, right? It's more like automating a factory than it is like innovating a new algorithm. It's not to say algorithm innovations don't happen. They do. They're useful. They're required. They're extraordinarily rare, and you ain't doing it. Don't worry about it. Okay? You probably don't know anybody who's going to do that work. And if they do, how good is the algorithm? How much better is it? How much impact does it have? Yeah, the answer is none. Okay? The answer is almost none. Almost certainly. There are huge exceptions, but they're so rare, they're not worth thinking about. This isn't a talent issue. The industry has changed to cranking out software cogs, software gears, software parts, mostly through not creation of new algorithms or creation of new ways of doing software, but through integration. And so you see the rise of DevOps. Right? And DevOps is all the pieces between development and operations. Other people define it differently. They're all wrong. Right? That's what DevOps actually functions as in the world. In the old days, we used to have the development team, the configuration management team, which handled version control, integration of the software, right? And then you'd have a QA team, right, that worked with the configuration management team, and the developers were completely isolated. They just did their thing and made it work on their machine, and the configuration management team got it to work on any machine, and the QA team tested for bugs. Then you had a software release team. Sometimes that was the configuration management team would also do the actual releases. Sometimes they'd just do the version control, right? And then you had a team of maintenance workers that would maintain the running production software. Okay? And in the middle of that, you had IT. At every step doing IT things, which was set up the network, but be in on the meetings and say, no, you can't do the network that way, you have to do it this way. Right? Software engineers didn't run any of that, any of it. For good reason, because those specialties are specialties, right? Understanding networks is not software engineering like 101. In fact, it's not part of software engineering at all. Right? But it is a specialty, and I'll tell you who sucks at understanding networks and firewalls and software engineers. They're terrible at it. They're horrible at it. They're horrific at it, with a few exceptions. Granted, I might have to claim to be one of them. I know 8 programming languages, and I'm a senior network engineer. I'm also a senior storage engineer, by the way. Senior a lot of things engineer. Not important. Who cares? No one cares. My talent never got me to the heights of anything. Ever. No matter how many millions of dollars I saved companies. Right? On an ongoing yearly basis. Yeah, I got none of that. And to some extent, I was a consultant. That was my job. Who cares? Right? Not important. Also, your talent's not worth anything. I'm sorry. However talented you think you are is not worth anything. You know what's worth something? Sleeping under your desk. That's what made Elon Musk big. Sleeping under his desk. Not right. Right. Companies are complicated. There's a lot going on. The industry's consolidated away from innovation and towards widgets. What does that mean? The person willing to make widgets fast and cheap, even if they're imperfect, is going to outperform the smart person in all cases. All cases in software. I'm sorry. Are they also working cheaper? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't actually matter. Now, of course, in a business, if you can hire somebody for $120K a year or $80K a year, you're going to hire the $80K a year guy, even if he's not as good. Sorry, talent doesn't scale the way you think. It just doesn't. Especially not if the $80K a year guy is going to get $80K a year, no matter how many hours he works an extra 10 or 15 hours a week, because his goal is to live in the United States. And your goal is to have a McMansion. You already live in the United States. You want $120,000 a year or $200,000 a year because you want a freaking McMansion. Okay, bro, I get it. This guy doesn't want a McMansion. He doesn't care. He wants in the United States. He'll live with 3 other people from his country. You won't do that. He'll work 80-hour weeks once in a while, maybe all the time. Maybe he'll work through Christmas because he doesn't celebrate Christmas. You do. You won't do that. You want 40 hours a week and $200,000 a year. So do I. We can't compete. It's not possible. It doesn't matter. Talent doesn't scale to money. Sorry, there are some exceptions. There are exceptions. You're not one of them. It's that simple. Sorry, bro. So the changes in the industry, combined with how industry works, right? Companies as such, combined with the double whammy of cheaper labor that's willing to work more hours at the same time, means your talent is just not worth what you think it's worth. Ever. Like, sorry, bro. Unless you can do something really unique, unless you know somebody, right? People will hire you because they like you. They're far more likely to get hired for that. Far more likely. Not because of what you can do or what you've done. Now, occasionally, sure, it's a factor. But I don't know, man. I've been around 35 years in the industry. Just almost never happens. Then people go, oh, you're really good at this. We'll hire you. I mean, I've been in C-suite meetings where people have asked, and I'm a consultant. They're like, should we hire this super good engineer? And I'm like, well, yeah, actually, he's a super good engineer. He didn't get hired. And I'm like, well, but like, you kind of should have hired him. And instead, they hired some incompetent retard who I said, yeah, you know what? He really doesn't know his stuff. And paid more money. This happens all the time in corporations. Do you know why? Because corporations do not actually care that much about money. At least not on the scale you and I think of it. And people think like corporations want to squeeze every penny. No, they don't. Corporations waste millions of dollars all the time, and they don't give a shit. Do not. I had a really good recruiter a few years back, and she was like, "Well, what skills of yours can I?" And I'm like, "All right, look, here are the skills that I think we can market." Now, I'm an idiot, okay? And I wasn't really understanding the change in the market back then. This is just pre-fake news virus scam bullshit. And I said, look, I can easily save any company 25% on their Amazon bill. Easily. Piece of cake. All day long. We never got a single person interested at all. And she was a really good recruiter. She couldn't sell it. She couldn't sell it. No one cared. No one cared. No one cared. Before that, and I should have known this, right? Because before that, I was working for a company, and they were like, well, we're going to move all our stuff over to Amazon. And I'm like, why? You have 2 data centers. Why would you want to pay 5 times as much for the same service? Because that's Amazon's 5 times more expensive than doing it yourself. You can look that up. This isn't magic, right? Everybody can look it up and see it. Nope. Did it anyway. There were presentations to the C-suite. Don't do this. It's way more expensive. They didn't care. They didn't care. Did not care. Spent 5 times as much money to do exactly the same thing, and were now forced to change all their software because they had different infrastructure. They didn't own the infrastructure now. Amazon owns the infrastructure. You have the infrastructure tools that Amazon gives you. You can't run your old infrastructure in Amazon for the most part. There are some exceptions, whatever. You want to do that? Pay me a lot of money. I'll show you how. Right? But why? This is what companies do. One of the last was the last big contract I had. They had, I think I've talked about this before. They had a website, one website, one domain, one website, one, web services platform, whatever, one website, 12 web pages. Okay. They spent $10 million to redo 12 web pages and never released a line of code. Not one. 0 lines of code. 0. You know what their solution was? Now, mind you, 12 web pages Could have outsourced that for $3 million. I was tempted to say, listen, why don't you pay me $500,000 and in 3 months I'll have this done? Because I actually could have done it. It wasn't that hard. And they had a team of people. Oh, they had a team of people. Their solution was, we failed. We're going to spend $20 million this time. And I was on the consulting team that was flown out to Nashville. I love Nashville. I want to get another contract there. That'd be fun. To advise them. And the company that I was subbing for did not get the contract. So I did not stay in Nashville just before the fake news virus scam, which I really unhappy about. And I wasn't making a huge amount. They were billing me out a huge amount of money. I wasn't making a huge amount of money. I was making plenty. I wouldn't have cared. Just plenty of money. Given where I live, anything north of 100K is way more money than I need. Way more. Right? You can buy me pretty cheap. So that was their solution. And I was like, mate, I'll build it for you in 3 months for $500,000. How's that? And I could have. Easily, right? Easily. I mean, it would have been real work. It would have been 40 hours, not at 3 months. But I could have done. I could have gotten it all done by myself. They had a team of software engineers doing nothing. Right. They had committed already, from a management standpoint, to change to microservices, which is exactly what we told them not to do. Basically said, you guys don't know anything about service-oriented architecture, and therefore you should not jump from monolithic architecture to microservices. Instead, you use service-oriented architecture. But by the way, I've said this before on this channel, service-oriented architecture is correct. Microservices is wrong and monolith is wrong. But there is a third thing. It's called service-oriented architecture. Those are the golden years of software. All the software that works still and doesn't have bugs, service-oriented architecture. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Right? Of course, it has to be QA'd, which I know no one does QA anymore. They just let the customers do it. I think that's fine. Morons. Industry has changed. It's compressed. All of the specialties that used to make software work well are gone. Because all the code's been written, all the magic is in gluing existing code together. Now, this is inefficient, bug-prone, and stupid. I actually did some surveys for a bunch of contracts that I did starting from my time at Boston College onward. I was like, how many lines of code that you're running in, we'll say, executable form? I know JavaScript's not quite executable form, whatever. How many lines of code are you running versus how many lines of code are in your version control system that you're editing, right? Because a lot of things you might have in your version control system that are frameworks that you never touch because you just have frameworks that are needed for your integration and your automation, but they're not your code. You're not editing them, okay? You know what the number was? It was 1%. So 1% of the running code that you're actually executing, or at least shipping. I shouldn't say executing because it's a lot harder if you say executing. So you're shipping this code. 1% of it is the code that you're actively involved in developing. The rest of it was developed for you and you're not even modifying it. 1%. You are a cog in a large machine and your talent is mostly irrelevant. You are not engineering software. You are gluing Legos together. This is very valuable. I made a shitload of money gluing Legos together because I was an integration engineer, among other things. Like I did DevOps before they called it DevOps and made all kinds of things work. Automated the ever-living crap out of tons of stuff. Well, automation is a form of integration, right? And I love it. I think it's great. It's hard to do well. I do it well. Thank you very much. I get the creds and the experience to prove it. Don't care. I also know how to develop algorithms, and I'm okay at that. I'm not great. I'm okay at developing algorithms. I helped develop about 14 patents. They're not my name. I gave them away for reasons, right? Because I didn't care, and I don't care now that happened. Also, my buddy did not get a lot of money for them, but whatever. This is the world, man. The world does not work the way you think it works. And I never cared. Like, I knew what he was doing. I'm like, oh, you're going to sell this back to the company you work for 12 grand. It's worth way more than that, but whatever. I think I wanted to help him. He's a buddy of mine, right? Like, I didn't care. These things just come to me. It's not that hard. It's not valuable to me. Does it make me talented? I don't know. I don't care. This isn't important, right? This isn't important. Your talent is worth nothing. I'm sorry. You need to understand the market you're in. Software engineering as engineering isn't worth much. What's worth a lot is engineering integration solutions and automation solutions. That is why DevOps engineers make more than software engineers right now, among other reasons, but that's the primary reason. That's what you need to know. H1b visa is not only about H1b visa. It is tied up in immigration. If you are concerned about immigration, H1b visa is a concern for you. If you are concerned about the culture and you think there's a culture war, all immigration is a concern to you. You can't say culture war and say, well, we shouldn't care about immigration at the same time. You have a fundamental conflict in your head. That's why this is an issue, and that's why everybody seems to be completely misunderstanding it. There are a few people that have noticed a few things, like, oh, he didn't say talented, he said talented and, right, and willing to work. Look, you have high expectations, and you're aiming really high, and that ain't the world you live in. You ain't gonna get it. You need to aim lower and figure out how to make it work. You could move to South Carolina and drop your expenses by more than 50% tomorrow. Those other trade-offs. If you can't work remote, might be a problem for you. If you're not willing to travel, it's a big problem for you, right? Can't work remote and you're not willing to travel, like get on a plane 3-4 days a week and work somewhere else. It's a problem. If you're willing to make those sacrifices, make a shitload of money. But it takes sacrifice. Elon Musk slept under his desk, man. Like, will you do that? Well, there's a guy from India who'll do it for the opportunity of coming to the United States and having a smaller house. That's what you're competing against. You're not competing for talent. It's just not the way the world works. I'm sorry that people told you or gave you the impression that that's the way the world works. I really am. But it's not the way the world works.